Rob, our co-host, and we've been talking about auto insurance, no-fault auto insurance reform this morning. The debate is ongoing in Lansing this week. The effort pushed by Mayor Mike Duggan to find a way to drive down the cost of auto insurance for Detroit motorists. It's not uncommon, as our Detroit listeners know, for auto insurance to cost $3,000 or more per vehicle in the city. And statewide, I think our average cost is about $2,200, $2,300 compared to about $1,200 for the rest of the nation. And the mayor believes that auto insurance is one of those things, as he told us when he was on the first day of the show, is one of the things that is holding back Detroit's comeback. And, people across the state are sort of fed up with these high insurance rates. And the solution the mayor has offered and that House Speaker Tom Litter has embraced is a plan to get rid of the unlimited catastrophic care benefits that are included in no-fault in insurance policies. So Michigan is the only state in the nation that has such benefits. You get hurt in a car accident, those benefits will pay everything, all of your costs, all of your treatment costs, and a whole lot more for the rest of your life. I think the average payout per person on per claimant, the average cost is about $50,000 a year. Very expensive. It's a driver of auto insurance costs. On the other side, you have folks like Brooks Patterson, hospitals, trial lawyers too, who say you get rid of this and the cost is going to go somewhere. And the worry is amongst the hospitals that they're going to get stuck with unpaid bills. Health insurers feel that their costs are going to go way up. Their obligations are going to go way up. And Brooks Patterson, who was in a rather catastrophic car accident, is worried that people are going to run out of money to get the care they need. So we're going to go next. We talked to Chad Livengood in the last segment, who set this issue up for us. We're going to go now to Steve Gursten of Michigan Auto Law. You're speaking on behalf of the trial attorneys, and you are not. You guys taking a lot of heat up there as being one of the causes of the high insurance costs. You've been watching the debate in Lansing. You've been up there for the last couple of days, or just? Yes. Okay, so tell me, let's hear your perspective on this from the trial attorney's perspective.
Well, what I would say is we do need to lower the cost of auto insurance.
Okay.
I don't think this bill does that. I don't think the rhetoric and the promises that are being made about this bill actually do the things they say it's going to do. It's not a rate relief bill. It's certainly not a consumer bill. It's not a civil rights bill. It's an insurance company written bill, and it's really, really good for insurance companies. But
for auto insurance companies.
For the auto insurance companies. But for you and I as taxpayers, all that money that the insurance companies aren't going to pay, if there's a $25,000 cap for people, where does that go? It gets shifted onto us as taxpayers in the form of paying out for Medicaid. And as you heard yesterday, it's going to be about $150 million more dollars that's going to be shifted to the taxpayers. And just one more thing.
Yeah.
As a small business owner, the other part is we're going to have higher healthcare costs, and healthcare is going to cost a lot more for employers, especially in places like Detroit.
So, Steve Gursten, you're saying that this cost is going to shift, but motorists will have choices. They can choose the $25,000 option. There's a $250,000 option, right?
I think that's a little disingenuous, though.
Okay.
The political reality is they're calling it $250,000. It's really $25,000 for people, for individuals. Okay. The remaining $225,000 is really just a kickback. It's a bribe to the hospitals to try and get them to go along with this bill, and it's limited only to acute emergency room care.
Okay.
So it doesn't cover you as soon as you leave the emergency room. That's $25,000 that has to cover everything else now.
Okay. So, Stephen, we keep hearing folks say that Michigan's the only state in the nation with this setup, and other states don't have unlimited catastrophic care. How do they get by? What's happening in those other 49 states where rates are lower, much lower than they are in Michigan.
Fair.
And are people getting cast out onto the street with catastrophic injuries?
I have the benefit of practicing in other states as well.
Okay.
So I see firsthand what's happening.
Mhm.
And I'm actually the president of the Motor Vehicle Trial Lawyers Association. So I lecture in all 50 states. Let me tell you what happens when you have the misfortune of being involved in a terrible car crash in a pure tort state.
Sure.
What happens is if you don't have great health insurance,
Mm-hmm.
and many people don't, or they have health insurance plans with auto exclusions that don't pay for auto accidents,
Right.
or they have ERISA plans that claw back everything.
Okay.
What happens is that they lose everything. The reality is they blow through all their personal savings.
Mm-hmm.
They have to declare personal bankruptcy because of medical debt, and they get pushed onto Medicaid. And normally, if they have catastrophic injuries, then they're warehoused in substandard facilities. In most of these pure tort states, they maybe, if they're lucky, have one great trauma center for TBI
Mhm.
rehabilitation or spinal cord rehabilitation, but they don't have the medical care that we have in Michigan because of no fault.
So if this is such a great system and an exemplary system, why haven't any of the other 49 states followed us into it? Why haven't they adopted the same system?
That's a good question.
Mhm.
I think, see, the terrible frustration I have
Mhm.
as an attorney that helps people who are hurt
Mm-hmm.
is I feel like we have the potential to really have our cake and eat it too here. We have the potential to keep all these amazing life-saving benefits and protections for people in Michigan, and we have the potential to really drastically reduce the cost of auto insurance, especially for people in Detroit, but all over the state. And the reason we don't, in my opinion, is Michigan is one of the only states in the country that has this giant loophole in our law where the insurance commissioner does not have the power to regulate profit margins.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this system now. Think about it. It's insane. Where by law, we're required to purchase auto no-fault insurance, where we pay very significant civil and criminal penalties if we don't purchase auto
Sure.
insurance. But our state then can't regulate the profit margins of the companies that sell it to us. So people like Duggan right now, and this is what's so frustrating to me, is he goes around saying he's a numbers guy, he's a metrics nut.
Sure.
But everybody's going into this blind. Nobody knows exactly how much money the insurance companies are making. We do know the last time a study was done on this in 2009 by Jay Ingoff, who was the former insurance commissioner, that he said they are highly profitable. So all I'm saying is, shouldn't we have the facts first?
Yeah, but Stephen, I mean, clearly there's a lot of people with their hands in this thing, and not everybody's hands
Are
are
clean.
entirely clean, including your side of this equation. I mean, you sort of brought your side of the argument sort of brought this situation on yourself with the sort of gluttonous abuse of the catastrophic care fund. I sat down with some folks not long ago to look at the sort of things that are paid for, and almost nothing isn't paid for, whether it's aromatherapy or, if you have a family member who takes care of you, that person is paid almost around the clock. We heard Chad Livingston talk about, some of the testimony in these hearings talking about you all take 1/3 of the medical benefits and have an incentive to keep filing suit after suit after suit. And a lot of times trial lawyers and medical providers are in partnership in terms of ordering tests and providing tests, demanding tests in court. I mean, it has not been a clean system by a long shot.
So I'm so glad you brought that up.
Mm-hmm. I imagine you are.
No, I am, because I've been speaking out against the lawyers who have been committing fraud and abusing the system for years. And I just want to be absolutely clear that is not all of us. It is a smaller handful. And frankly, if the rumors are true, there are coming indictments regarding some of the worst abusers. But let me address what's happening here.
Uh-huh.
There are a small group of trial lawyers. Most of us go into this business because we really like people. We really want to help people.
And I accept that. And I know you guys take a lot of abuse, but you don't have to commit fraud necessarily to abuse a system that is unchecked. There's no ability by the insurance company to challenge the rates.
Oh, that's wrong, though.
Well, that's what they claim. It's not true.
That's so wrong. So first, the people who are committing fraud should lose their license.
Of course.
They should go to jail,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no room for them in the profession. The one thing I do support from this bill is a fee schedule.
Okay.
Because I think
which doesn't exist now, right?
Which does not exist now. And the reality is a fee schedule is going to eliminate all the fraud overnight.
Explain a fee schedule, just for our
Sure.
listeners might not know what you're talking about.
Sure. So part of the issue of medical provider fraud
Mm-hmm.
and attorney fraud is that like hospitals, like what Duggan used to do,
Yeah.
they're charging more for, let's say, an MRI or an X-ray than they would through Blue Cross
Sure.
or through other health insurance plans.
Gouging a little bit.
Well, gouging, but if you talk to L. Brooks Patterson, he'll
Mm-hmm.
say, listen, there's a really good reason for it. Insurance companies delay and delay and delay.
Mm-hmm.
They make you wait a year and a half for payment. They make you hire a lawyer and jump through all these legal hoops. That he compares it to the person with really bad credit and that they shouldn't pay the same price as someone who has good credit and pays right away. That said, and by the way, we never even talked about the insurance company denials. And don't forget, those have spiked almost 300% in the last
Denials
several
of
years.
care.
Denials of care.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say respectfully that they pay everything,
Mm-hmm.
as someone in the trenches, let me tell you, they
Not
don't.
true.
They don't. But a fee schedule.
A fee schedule, would that, how could you reduce the overall cost of this system with a reasonable fee schedule?
Absolutely. That really
And
achieves the goal.
your side of the argument, the people you represent, would accept a fee schedule?
I think everybody at this point wants a fee schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I think the issue is going to be the rate. CPAN, which is a coalition of hospitals and medical providers, have a more reasonable rate, I think. But the reality is a fee schedule overnight wipes out a lot of the fraud. It wipes out a lot of the ambulance chasing and solicitation
Sure.
that disgusts me as an attorney. It really forces the bad actors and the medical provider part. They can't price gouge. They don't have to hire lawyers now. They don't have to bring lawsuits. It eliminates the clog of lawsuits in the courts. I've been in support of the fee schedule for years.
Would that also include, Steve, would that also include some examination of the sorts of services that are covered and maybe a menu that you do cover, a menu that some things you just don't cover?
Yes, but remember that exists today. So, for example, even though for chronic pain patients, people with horrific injuries, they've shown that medical marijuana is so much more effective and safer than opiates. And we have this opiate crisis in America.
Yes.
The insurance companies don't pay for medical marijuana, even though it's cheaper and much safer. I've had clients that have had 22 surgeries. They can't get medical marijuana. The doctors want to keep giving them these strong narcotic opiates. Stem
Much
cell
more
therapy.
expensive and more dangerous. Right?
So much more. I mean, we have a crisis in America because of this.
So we're paying perhaps for some things we might not ought to pay for, and not some things that would be useful. We had a guy on not long ago who told us about a farmer who was injured and his leg was hurt or whatever. He ended up getting one of these all-terrain vehicles paid for so he could work his farm. I mean, there's some things that seem like
that doesn't happen now because there's a case called Admire, so
Okay.
they stopped that.
All
But
right.
I'll give you. And there's
But
so many.
the system
examples.
has been sort of a honeypot for a lot of people for a long time.
There have clearly been excesses, and that's again why I do support a fee schedule. But
Okay. And
going
other
back to-
reforms?
sorry,
And other reforms?
and certainly other reforms. I mean, what the frustration for me is this bill has so much promise potentially. If they
Mhm.
just did the things that they're saying it would do, it would be
Mhm.
great. Like, for example, they were talking about a fraud authority. Fraud authority is great. We need a fraud authority. But you know what? It should be a fraud authority that looks at fraud by the insurance companies also, not just fraud
Mhm.
by claimants. And all I'm saying is it should be both sides, not just one.
Steve, let's pause a minute and take a call. We've got John on the line. John, welcome to the Nolan Finley Show on 910 AM Superstation.
Good morning, Nolan Finley Show. Yes, I'm just sitting there thinking about Mayor Dugan and, L. Brooks Patterson. I'm wondering if they're both working for the lawyers and the pharmaceutical and the insurance companies. They're working together on both sides, because if either one of them had gotten an accident, a catastrophic accident, which I know that L. Brooks Patterson did, either one of them would lose their home or any health insurance that they have. they're already on the taxpayers' payroll. So these guys are just supporting the lawyers and the insurance companies that are writing the bills. These guys aren't writing the bills. That's the problem right there, I think.
Yeah, and John, thank you for that comment. And Steve Gursten, who is here from Michigan Auto Law, talking from the trial lawyer's perspective on this issue. Who is speaking for consumers, the people who are paying these high insurance rates, as this bill is being pushed through Lansing or being debated in Lansing? Is there a voice for consumers
In this bill? No.
in this process?
There was another competing bill that came out about 2 weeks earlier that's supported by a number of Republicans and Democrats and the Coalition Protecting Auto No Fault, which is a number of medical providers and Elbrooks. I think they have a more balanced approach. But again, when we get, let's say, what's the key driver of high auto insurance in Detroit? Well, this bill doesn't do much for Detroit.
What is that key driver?
To me, this is not a civil rights bill. The key thing are things like redlining, credit scoring, using zip codes,
and you
using non-driving related factors.
So you think
like
those are
income.
bigger cost drivers than the catastrophic care?
I think they both are huge cost drivers, but this bill does nothing about that.
Kelly on line one. Let's go to Kelly. Welcome to the Nolan Finley Show on the 910 AM Superstation. We're talking auto insurance rates. Our guest has been Steve Gursten of the Michigan Auto Law. Kelly, what's on your mind?
When you see commercials from the trial attorneys saying that they collected over $1 billion in lawsuits, that makes me, well, number one, that infuriates me because $1 billion is a lot of money.
It is.
And I would really like to know, why is L. Brooks Patterson so staunchly against lowering the catastrophic dollar amount as opposed to lobbying and railing against the healthcare system that actually drives those costs that would even make you have to spend $250,000 to $500,000 just for care. In my opinion, follow the money, so that somewhere in this whole shenanigan, somebody is pocketing profits from somewhere. And I would really like to know why he is so against lowering that dollar amount instead of, just like I said, just going against the healthcare industry. And what is the big deal about lowering it? I guess, I don't know. I'm not understanding it.
Thank you,
If you have a
Kelly.
3-tier system, let somebody decide how much they want to pay towards their care. What's the big deal in that?
Yeah, and Kelly, we're going to get Steve Gursten to respond to that. But you can hear the frustration people have with their insurance rates, and the cost of care is a major factor in all of this, and,
Yes.
and a reason why this catastrophic fund costs so much, Steve.
Yeah, so a couple things. The cost of catastrophic care would be lowered by definition with a fee schedule. So that would create enormous cost savings right off the bat. But I think the reason, for example, the caller was mentioning L. Brooks Patterson, the reason he's against it as I think a fiscally conservative Oakland County Republican is also because he's looking at this bill and he's saying, okay, what is it going to do? Well, if you replace an unlimited, and by the way, it really isn't unlimited, it's $550,000 because everything after that goes into the MCCA fund. So people forget that. I think what people like L. Brooks are saying is a couple things. One, if you're dropping $550,000, which exists today, to $25,000, we should have a heck of a lot more guaranteed savings than this 40% of 40% of PIP.
Okay.
So they're saying there's going to be a 40% savings on no-fault PIP. That's about 40% of your auto no-fault bill.
Okay.
Well, if we're dropping it from $550,000 to $25,000, that's a 95% drop. So shouldn't there be a lot more savings?
That's a good point.
It's a really good point.
Let's hear from Pat. Pat, welcome to the Nolan Finley Show on 910 AM Superstation.
Well, good morning to you both. I appreciate this, and I'm wondering, City Council makes $75,000 a year. We pay for their car. We pay for their insurance. We pay for their gas. if we didn't do this and all these high officials didn't have cars that we pay for, do you think this car insurance would be more to our benefit if they had to pay for their car, they had to pay for their gas, and they had to pay for their insurance? Maybe it would be not a revolving door, and it would be a standard fact that they would feel the pain that we all do.
Thanks, Pat. We appreciate your comment. Sylvia, line 1, you're on the Nolan Finley Show on the 910 AM Superstation. What's on your mind?
Good morning. I just chimed in, so I didn't hear a lot. But my question is, what's the big deal, and why can't they correct the redlining that's really going on? Let's get to the root of the evil. The fact that people's zip codes and credit scores, and the list goes on. And what is that secret cap that they already have for insurers that gets in a catastrophic medical condition? Thank you for taking my call.
Steve Gursten, that was one of the issues you raised, that redlining, credit scoring, and all of that is far more responsible for the high rates. Is that included in this bill at all?
No. And that's why I'm so exasperated when Duggan and others say this is a civil rights bill, because it's not doing anything about these things like credit scoring and redlining that are illegal in many other states. And this is the thing. Even if this law and this quote rate reduction took effect, because, by the way, there is no guaranteed rate reduction with this bill, and that's really important to remember. But even if it took effect, Detroit's still going to be paying so much more than everybody else in the country. And if you took Detroit out of the picture entirely, Michigan drops from the most expensive to now about 12 or 14 in the nation on most expensive. So why is Detroit so much more expensive? And the reason is that in Michigan, the insurance companies are allowed to use a lot of factors like zip codes, totally non-driving related factors, income, redlining, that they can't use in other states. So people in Detroit are penalized. And if you want to lower the price dramatically in places like Detroit, we should have the same laws that they have in places like California.
Kim, welcome to the Nolan Finley Show. We're talking auto insurance reform with Steve Gursten of Michigan Auto Law, speaking on behalf of the trial attorneys. Kim, what's on your mind?
Yes, Steve, you're hitting on that. And Nolan, I don't know why. I mean, Nolan, you've been doing what you're doing for years. I think you know the problem. This redlining. And for example, there was a neighbor that lived next door to me, moved to Lansing, automatically. She went from paying $375 a month to paying $89 a month for the same car. She had the same credit. But it seems like the line in Detroit, and mostly it's all black areas, right?
Okay.
So,
and Kim, let's finish out with Steve Gursten here. He's been talking about redlining. And the question I would have, Steve, is it true redlining, or are the risks for insurance companies higher in Detroit?
So, sure, the risks are higher. But there are factors, a huge part of your auto insurance bill, again, is not going to be touched by those risks. So things like comprehensive and collision coverage, which are huge drivers of high car insurance rates, those aren't going to be touched by this bill.
No different in Detroit than in Lansing. What about this idea that the fact that so many people in Detroit don't have auto insurance contributes to the higher cost?
Now, that's a civil rights issue. And that really is troubling. And what's also troubling is how our law really draconian, in the most draconian way possible, punishes people without auto insurance. So if you're a Detroiter and you don't have auto insurance, and let's say you're completely innocent, stopped at a red light, and you're hit by a drunk driver and paralyzed, do you know that you can't even sue the drunk driver that paralyzed you? You don't even have the right, the Seventh Amendment right, to sue someone who caused your injuries. So our law really has some really draconian punishments.
Okay, so before we got to go, we got to get to a break, Steve. I just wanted to ask you for your assessment. You've been up there watching it. You're in the business of counting votes, I guess, of assessing these sort of political situations. You're going to pass or not going to pass?
It's not going to pass because it doesn't do the things it says it's going to do.
Is there any form of it that might pass?
I think we will see fee schedules. I wish we can take out the loopholes they have here.
Do you think we'll see some sort of bill come out of this?
I think hopefully we will. I would love to eliminate a lot of the fraud, lawyer fraud, medical provider fraud, and insurance company fraud.
Okay.
I'd like to see real meaningful rate relief, which this bill doesn't do because there are too many loopholes. It's more of a pretty please from the insurance companies asking them to reduce rates.
All right. Steve Gursten from Michigan Auto Law, thanks for being with us on the Nolan Finley Show, 910 AM Superstation. Stay with us. We'll be back after the break.
.829 the time right now. I'm Andre Ashline from the Superstation Weather and Traffic Center. Onto the roads. We have a road construction that has the left lane blocked along Dixie Highway southbound between Andersville Road and Walton. We're also watching an accident this morning. If you're traveling the southbound lanes